Hello and welcome to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. This is a platform where we get curious about all things gender, sex and sexuality, as well as feminism, the inclusive kind, mental health and kink, and all that makes us humans unique and diverse. From body positivity to body dysmorphia, it's all welcome here. Come with us on a journey of inclusion, acceptance and respect. I'm your host, Esther Lemons. I identify as a cisgender woman and my pronouns are she and her. In this episode, I'm speaking to ALYS WILFRED, or Fred for short, who is a writer, storyteller and folklorist who specialises in orality and medieval and early modern textual cultures. Fred's pronouns are they, them, or sie, ze, and they identify as transmasculine, non-binary and gender fluid. Find out what that means to them in this episode. We also talk about parenting, transitioning, top surgery, hormone therapy, testosterone or T for short, and the effects on the body, adolescence, binding, bisexuality, relationship, fertility, writing, storytelling, and pronouns. It was recorded on the 12th of December 2018. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
What's your name?
So I'm ALYS WILFRED.
Nice to meet you. And how do you identify?
I identify as transmasculine and non-binary, but I also sometimes use the label genderfluid.
Awesome. I love the labels. What does that actually mean to you?
So I always break it down that non-binary is what I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I am neither a man nor a woman. That what is inside my head and my heart does not fit into that rather simplistic binary. But that my presentation, my social identity is masculine. Not actually because I think that term has any worth, but because that's how people will categorise the way I look, the way I behave. Whereas gender fluid is how I interact with my gender, so it's not fixed. And even though it sort of circles a point whereby I'm happier with a body that people would describe as masculine, actually sometimes it's less that way, sometimes it's more another way.
Right. Cool. And have you kind of always felt this way, or is there a certain time in your life that you can remember becoming aware of it?
That's a very difficult question.
Okay.
I think I was aware of it as a child, but I didn't have a language to describe it. And then as I grew older, I repressed a lot of it, and I worked through it It's difficult to say, because if you'd asked me at the time, I would have said I was perfectly happy, but then I wasn't perfectly happy. So how aware are you of something that is right in the back of your head and hidden from yourself? So it was about 3 years ago I came out.
Oh, right. Okay. And how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 31.
31. Okay. Yeah. So... awesome. I'm just processing in my brain. Besides that, do you have a family? How is your life at the moment with that?
So I'm married. I have a spouse, and I've got 2 children who are almost 9 and 6.
Wow. Yeah. So they're quite young.
So they are.
And you're quite young, because as I was thinking earlier, I don't know that many trans and non-binary and other gender diverse people who have children unless they're a bit older. So they have grown-up kids and stuff like that. So it's I've not encountered anyone sort of as young as you before, so who's in that sort of place with gender, as it were. So I mean, how has it been with your family? How have they been supporting you, and how have they taken your coming out and everything like that?
I mean, it's very supportive in many ways. I'm very lucky. My partner is possibly non-binary, certainly gender non-conforming themselves.
Okay.
So that's good. And they've been completely there for me, which is wonderful. Kids, it's harder. I think with my youngest, it's her normal. I started questioning around the time she was born. I did a lot of cross-dressing when I was pregnant with her, for example. But it's, for my eldest, I think, finds it a bit more difficult, because she remembers still before that, obviously, as many parents do, I hid it from them.
Mm-hmm.
Just to follow up on what you said about not knowing many young parents, and parents of young children.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a strong tendency to hide it from the kids and say, well, I'll be normal for them, and actually repress it again until they leave home.
Yeah.
Which was my initial thought, really.
Mm-hmm. So what changed that? What made you decide to come out anyway?
It became intolerable.
Wow, yeah.
I think as soon as I acknowledged that I had these feelings and that I was this way, it became increasingly painful to lie about it. And I realised I was suicidal at the time, and I realised that my kids would probably rather I was there and a bit weird than not there at all.
Absolutely. Wow.
When it comes to that choice, you got to make the best call.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, what did it feel like to not be able to express that part about you?
It was a practice in silence. I think it was almost as though I was saying that my feelings on that matter, and therefore on any matter, weren't important and weren't worth hearing. And I often describe it as manoeuvring yourself into a smaller and smaller space.
Yeah.
And what you think is if I make it small enough, people will just let it go. But it's never small enough because they don't want it there at all. And ultimately, you can't keep contracting. You can't keep shutting up. You eventually just got to move.
Yeah, that's not the point of life, really, is it? It's kind of the opposite.
Yes.
We want to be expanding and, yeah, definitely. So has your, do you have sort of your parents, how have they been with it all?
Yeah, I mean, they've been very, very kind.
They don't quite get it.
They don't get it. They're very sweet. I love my parents.
Yeah.
My sister is great. She's absolutely brilliant. But, that wider family perhaps are just a bit bewildered.
I bet they must be. Yeah, it's just especially I think the older generation. They just. I don't think it's not necessarily bad will, but they just don't. You just can't comprehend it. I see that with my partner's parents as well. They're accepting. Yeah. They just don't. They just can't even. Yes. That's what it is.
And it was trying to describe to my mum. I was having a conversation with her about because I'm starting medical transition on 27th. I'm very excited.
This month.
This month.
Oh
yes.
Wow!
Yes.
Congratulations.
I finally got my T letter, son. Yes.
Yeah.
About how although I'm non-binary, I want a binary transition.
Really interesting.
When I first come out, I've been much shy about the transmasculine aspect because it took a long time to accept that about myself. So I kind of came to that about a year afterwards.
Okay.
But she was still holding that. I was gender fluid. I was going to be very androgynous and in the middle. And then said, no, I'm going for top surgery and testosterone, and we'll see maybe other stuff further down the line. And kind of want to present as masculine-ish full time.
Yeah.
And I think she was quite taken aback by that because she could have fully accepted that at the outset, but I think what she can't accept is the way it's changed.
Okay.
Well, can accept it, but can't get her head around it.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Accept is the wrong word.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I found interesting in sort of my experience with meeting more and more, gender diverse people over the years, because you might meet them. Like I met my partner when they were identifying as female, really. But since then, they've just become more of like non-binary. And it was quite funny because when we were talking about it one time with the group that we're all in, the non-binary meeting group, and all of a sudden they sort of came out with it. And I was like, hang on, I didn't get the memo. When did that happen? So it's it was a process for them as well. So they sort of maybe went from one extreme to the other extreme and then sort of found their place.
Yes.
Well, not in the middle, but somewhere in the, area between the two binaries, really. So.
And it's about negotiating your comfort zone to a great extent. I think certainly personally, when I'm presenting in a very flamboyant, drenched in glitter, makeup all over my face, kind of flower crowny way, I normally feel most masculine.
Really? That's interesting.
Whereas when I'm very, very masc, I feel quite androgynous.
Ah, okay.
And I think it was coming to the kind of gradual realization that my masculinity is incredibly camp.
Mm-hmm.
And that took a long time to get my head around. So people will then look at me and go, "Oh, you're non-binary, they, them." And I'm like, well, it's kind of he, him today, actually. But sure, whatever. Let's just go with that.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because I was going to ask you about the pronouns that you use different ones depending on how you feel, or?
I use they, them for expedience.
Okay.
Pronouns are a really difficult question, I think. I love being asked them because I think there's a real respect thing there.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think, honestly, we would do better with a complete neo-pronoun, something like sie, but we can't seem to agree on what that should be.
Right, yeah.
Whereas they is already in the language, people do already know how to conjugate the singular they pretend they don't.
Yeah.
But, you say something, oh, they left their bag on that table. You do it all the time. So it seems to be more acceptable. But at the same time, I don't mind he, ever, because I present as masculine. Yeah. And if the world reads me as that, then that's absolutely fine. But I think if people ask me specifically, I would always say they.
Yeah. So would you say that she is not something you relate to or identify with anymore, so you'd rather not?
I would very much rather not.
Okay.
I might feel differently when I'm more consistently read as male.
Interesting.
But I don't know. I'm reserving judgment on that because that hasn't happened yet.
That's fair enough. Yeah. So moving forward, you were saying about your sort of ongoing journey. So T stands for testosterone, obviously, just to clarify for those who don't know. And so how will that, affect you, and what effects will that have? What is the journey from then on?
There's a lot to it, and it's quite unpredictable. I was reluctant to start hormone therapy because, as I've said many times, unpredictable hormonal changes didn't go that well for me last time. So I will get hairier in the body and possibly less hairier on the top of my head. The latter of which I'm not looking forward to.
Right.
Apparently it's easier to gain muscle mass, which sounds awesome. My voice would drop. Am I allowed to go a bit not suitable for work here?
Sorry?
Am I allowed to go a bit not suitable for work?
Sure.
So my clitoris would enlarge to probably not huge, but it does get bigger.
Oh, it does have an effect on that. Okay.
My menstrual cycle would stop. It will probably have long-term negative effects on my fertility. And I will get a lot smellier, apparently. A lot smellier. And a lot hungrier.
Really?
Apparently
fascinating. Well, building muscle and stuff, I suppose. Yeah. Lots of protein and all that stuff. Yeah.
And they say unless you're exercising a lot, don't eat a lot more because you will put on a lot of weight. It's hard to lose if you want to do that. Yeah. Also, I will hopefully grow a beard. Which
you're looking forward to.
I am so looking forward to that.
Awesome. Cool. Just processing everything in my brain. So, I mean, what you were sort of talking about hormonal journeys and stuff. I mean, what was adolescence like for you? Was that really hard?
It was misery.
Yeah. How come?
Oh God, I hated it. I didn't want to do it at all.
I don't want to take part. Just can we cancel this, please?
I dressed like a child until I was about 13, 14. And like I was at dungarees and Doc Martens. And, I wouldn't wear a bra. I absolutely refused for years. I cut all my hair off. I had very long hair before that. I quite like long hair, although it's hassle to maintain, but I didn't want it. I started wearing very, very baggy clothes. It got to the point where it was with school uniform. It was inappropriate for me not to have something on underneath, and my mum said, "We need to get you a bra." I said, "Could I not just buy my breasts?" And she was like, "Nope, that's not safe," because there was no information about any safe way of doing it at that point. Because unbinding isn't great, especially if it's done unsafely. You can crack ribs and get chest infections.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Bad binding practice is very, very dangerous.
Okay.
Public safety announcement, that is my response.
Good. That's, good to know. Wow.
But yeah, so if you use something like ace bandages or duct tape over a t-shirt, you can get bronchitis. You can break your ribs. And so obviously my mum was terrified by the very idea.
Of course, I can understand that, yeah.
And a lot of the binders that were available then, honestly, were also very unsafe. They're a lot better these days.
Okay.
So,
well, that's good at least now.
Yeah, but I mean, we didn't even know they existed, and we didn't have the internet or anything. Of
course.
Like that.
And what do you look for? I mean, what do you even bloody Google?
Yeah.
It's like, what am I looking for? This,
Because I wasn't one of these trans kids who was very clearly, I am a boy. I would say I want to be a boy, or I'd like to be a boy sometimes, or I want to look like a boy. But I've never actually come out and say, I am a boy. So that was,
Wow. Interesting. So would you say that at the time you were having these thoughts about the whole gender thing, and then obviously when did you meet your partner at some point?
I was also bisexual, and the thing that really pushed me into the closet was guys. I liked guys. I wanted to start dating guys, and they reacted very badly, obviously, to somebody who was presenting very butch. So I hid a lot of myself. I became ultra femme for a few years,
right?
In a bit of a goth kind of way. Goth is you might encounter this a lot. It's the refuge for trans teenagers quite often,
right?
And I met my partner at school. He was in my sister's year, and my sister's a couple of years older. And it was, we just sort of hit it off, really. We're quite similar people. And something I joke about is that because I said I fancied him, and I told my sister this. And she came home a couple of weeks later and says, you have to get with this guy. He's the male version of you. we have a bit of a laugh about this sometimes.
Awesome.
And so, we started, and it just worked.
It just made sense. Yeah.
And possibly it also delayed me coming out because he never treated me as a woman. One of the weird things that actually happened through our relationship, people would come, are you sure he's not gay? And I'm like, and it happened repeatedly and throughout our relationship. And it was, presumably there was something there in the way we interacted that made people think, and obviously, gender non-conforming as well. So it was interesting. I'm kind of looking back at a lot of that, thinking, I was thinking if I'd been with someone else, they would have treated me like a woman. And when people have, I freak out. And that's
So I mean, it probably helps being in a relationship where, if you're similar in that way, then you can understand and support each other a lot more, can't you?
He taught me to tie a tie. I taught him to do his eyeliner. So
awesome! I love it. That's great. So, what made you decide? Have you always wanted a family, or did that sort of?
Yeah, I love kids. I do. I love babies.
Yeah.
It's just I always wanted babies.
Yeah.
And I think a really hard thing of being transmasculine and wanting a family is that testosterone affects your fertility. And I had to make, because I'm in my 30s now, I had to make that decision that it will almost certainly stop me having any more kids. And I had to make my peace with that.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. And I quite often, you live your fantasy life sometimes, and what had happened if, and if I'd been able to come out when I was 10, 11, 12, if I'd been able to transition then, and I possibly wouldn't have been able to have kids.
Yeah, totally.
And that,
yeah. Interesting how it all works out, isn't it?
Yeah.
So would you have wanted more kids? Would you you always had an idea of having a big family?
I always had an idea of having a big family.
Yeah.
I've made my peace with that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I appreciate it. Must have been a difficult choice, but you feel like it's the time now to take it to the next level and move on with it.
That's it. It's as my partner said, if you want to be changing nappies your whole life, and I'm like, you make a good point. I like sleep. and I like not changing nappies. It's brilliant.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that, isn't there? Fair point. Yeah. So do you feel how do you feel at the moment? Do you feel quite happy with where you're at anyway, sort of knowing you're on this path to kind of where you want to be more? Or?
It's a little rocky at the minute.
Okay.
Because obviously I'm not yet starting tea. Still got to wait another, how many days is it now? I should be counting down, shouldn't I?
Yeah. It's the 12th of December today.
16 days.
2018, by the way. Okay, yeah, wow.
So that's 15 days. That's good.
Yeah, countdown.
Countdown. I'm not having a tea day party. It's going to be quite small because it's in the middle of Christmas. But I am having a tea day party.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
So I kind of hurry up and start. But when it was this very distant possibility, I had my first GIC appointment at this gender identity clinic in January. I was quite kind of, well, I'm fine. I'm in a good place. It's moving. It's happening. Whereas now it's getting closer. I'm like, just come on now. Every time I get misgendered, it hurts a lot more because it's like
just kind of feels so close. Yeah.
And I think I'm worried that once it starts, I'm going to be impatient for the changes.
Yeah.
Because they're obviously
makes
very
sense.
slow.
So how long does it take for you to notice these changes once you start?
It depends a bit on the change. They say, I think it's 5-6 years it should all be finished.
Wow. Yeah.
Which, not too bad. And that some of the changes you will notice in the first month. And you will notice even at least the beginnings of most of the changes by 6 months. Like they say, your voice should mostly have broken, but it will take 2 years to settle down completely.
Okay.
Hair will increase, but you will noticeably be starting to get it in most places. And things like that will 6 months. So by the summer, it should be.
Wow. It's very exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's daunting, as I say, unpredictable hormonal changes, and we have a bad history. But
Wow. Yeah, so a bit of excitement and a bit of like, you know, so a bit,
it's injections because I know.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
I know estrogen you can take as a pill sometimes, can't
you? Yeah, you can get there's the gels you can get as well.
Whereas testosterone, it's gel or injection.
Okay.
And this is the funniest thing in my whole transition. I can't have testosterone gel because if cats get it on their fur, they'll lick it off and then they get horny. I love it. I can't have testo gel because my cats would get horny.
Oh my god. That's really funny. Actually, I wonder because my partner uses the estrogen gel. And I don't know how it affects our cats because we have loads of cats too. It
could be that affects it. It could be. I think the real reason they advise against it is because if you take testosterone orally, it can damage your liver. Obviously, because cats would be licking it off, it would, so it can make them sick as well.
Of course, it
doesn't do that.
Yeah.
But I don't like getting stabbed with needles.
No. And how often do you have to have the injections?
So they're starting with something called sustanon, which is every 28 days.
Okay, once a month then.
Once a month, yeah.
Like a cycle. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, apparently I will still have a hormone cycle.
Yeah.
It won't be quite the same, but it will still be there.
Wow.
And they'll adjust exactly how long between jabs depending on what my levels do. Because it's an ongoing diagnostic process.
So you need regular blood tests and things like that. Wow. And then do you have to go for checkups and stuff regularly as well? As well as the blood tests?
I think it would be, I think it's every 6 months if your bloods do anything unusual. It might be less often. I don't actually know.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I'll cross that bridge when I come to it.
Yeah, why not? Wow. Cool. So, I mean, what do you do? Do you work? Do you have a job, or do you work for yourself, or what do you do?
So I'm a freelance writer.
Okay.
So self-employed, which is both an advantage and a disadvantage, because it means I have to tell literally everybody I work with, no, it's they, them.
Right. Yeah.
Please don't use she, her on anything that mentions me. And it's also, I write as ALYS Earl. because I started doing this before I came out. Whereas mostly in my day-to-day life, I go by Wilfred or Fred. And so I introduce myself. Hey, I'm ALYS WILFRED. Please buy this book. And in a professional context. Or, hi, I'm Fred in a personal context. And it can make a lot of problems. I think I'm making problems for myself. And I need to work out a way of solving it, and I don't know.
Yeah. Well, maybe it'll, something will reveal itself in that way. Yeah. Could be like your author name. What's the word for like an author name?
Pen name.
Yeah, the pen name. Could be a pen name in it. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So have you always worked for yourself, or have you had jobs and stuff as well?
I had jobs before I had kids. I quit. I quit work to study actually, but then kids.
Life.
Yeah. I was a full-time caregiver for a good while, which is what I wanted to do. It was kind of pointless me going back to work because childcare would have cost about my full wage packet. And honestly, if you're going to be not going to be any better off for it and not seeing your child, it just made more sense to stay at home. And I wrote when I could, and then it was then I was starting to get stuff published by the time both kids were at school. So
nice.
There you go.
So is that what you want to keep on doing? You just want to keep writing, and that's your thing, is it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I also work as a storyteller a bit as well, so that's
nice. For whom, like?
Well, for everybody. I was actually last night working with Break Charity up in sort of North Norfolk way, and sort of telling stories to look after kids. But I like storytelling for adults as well because I write for adults mostly.
Yeah. I've been coming across the sort of concept of storytelling and like using it in your business, especially if you work for yourself, to communicate, I don't know, sort of what you're about and what makes you tick and everything. Because people, I think, especially in this sort of day and age, what I see is a lot of people just want to make genuine and authentic connections with people, and it's not just about what you do, and it's about what you stand for and your whole purpose behind it. That's important. So I love the idea of storytelling. Yeah, it's great.
It's kind of it's sprung from a lot of interests because a lot of my fiction is based on folklore, and my degree is sort of specialised in folklore, and so it kind of just came up as a natural byline of two other things I was doing. It just seems to be catching on, going quite well at the moment.
Nice.
I like it.
Awesome. That's great. So you're working on your next book at the moment as well?
Yes.
What's that going to be about?
So that is an urban fantasy set in Norwich.
Yeah.
And I'm not hiding it behind a false name this time. It is our city.
Yeah. Excellent. Cool. Nice. It's quite nice getting to know you a bit better. And I mean, is there anything else you'd like to add, or that you'd like people to know about you or about gender or anything else?
I think the most important thing is respect. And it's recognising that although we have a lot of micro labels, that we have a lot of variants, that actually it's very simple on an interpersonal level. I know a lot of people worry about, but I can't remember, you use 3 labels, and just remember non-binary then.
Yeah.
That's all you need to worry about. Just remember non-binary, they, them. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the safe option in a way. Yeah.
And it's the same for most people, even if they use kind of a very personal gender identifiers. And are they called microgenders?
I'm not actually sure.
I don't know. That's not the right word.
We can make it a word right now. Let's just make it a word.
I know there are micro labels, so
right.
That only 1 or 2 people use them.
Yeah.
Actually, it's just about being respectful to people and doing your best, not really. Like I don't mind if someone slips up. If they then go, oh no,
because I do it too.
Yeah. Everyone.
Even with people I've known for longer, it's just, I think what we do is we take all the bits that make up a person, and it's like your brain kind of makes a split decision sometimes as to the sum of those parts.
Yeah.
And it just happens. It's like, oh no, she, not he. Well, got it wrong. It does,
and I do it to myself because it's also habit.
Yeah.
If you've known someone for 31 years and they've always been she, and then say, well, I kind of don't like you using that, could you use they? It just takes a while for your brain to adjust.
Totally, yeah.
But it will only adjust if you do that work.
Yeah.
And actually, even when you think it wrong, stop yourself, go back. Yeah. So it's...
Yeah. I mean, it's not rocket science in the end, is it? It's like, I mean, we remember complicated names like, I don't know, Tchaikovsky and all that stuff. And it's like, it's not, you know, it's someone's name. And besides someone's name, you also remember the pronoun.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just an extra little thing to remember. Yeah. But it's still, it's, I think people can just get used to it, or people get used to it.
I mean, if people can remember that George Eliot is a woman and can get that, then they can remember that.
Yeah.
it's you know, you encounter writers who wrote under male or female pen names, and you know, but you can remember their correct gender, then you can do it for everybody.
Exactly. Just takes a bit of practice, and it's just not something people are used to. But I mean, this is I think this is something that's only going to expand.
Yes,
it's certainly not going away. So people are going to have to get used to it and you know, work around it.
And I think when you come down to people saying, "Oh, well, why are so many kids coming out as trans?" and it's because they're not so scared as I was.
Yeah.
I knew there was something wrong with me, and I perceived it as something wrong, that there was something that wasn't working.
Yeah.
That there was this social script I'd been given, and my brain was just nowhere over there, nowhere near it. And they've now got language and support to say, this is what the problem is. It's not a problem with me. It's a problem with this, and I'm going to fix it. And that's an incredible thing. As I say, I wish I'd been able to.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, I'm really glad to see that younger people have, you know, are much more free to express themselves in that way now. Yeah. That's great. So, yeah, like you're saying, some people might think, oh, there's so much more of it now. It's like, no, so much more people are out now and coming out now, and people who weren't out before coming out now. So it's all like, way, there it all is, you know.
Yeah, I didn't know that trans men, I knew that trans women existed. I didn't know that trans men existed until I was in my 20s.
Right.
I didn't know you could do it that way. It just didn't. No one had ever pointed it out to me. So what do you do? But now you've got the internet, you've got a lot of communities online, and people are going, well, hang on, that's possible. Yeah. And I feel like that I mean, there's that as many genders as there are people, to be fair, isn't there? Because everyone identifies in their own way. Yeah. And I think this is why I strongly identify as non-binary, because I think actually, although people identify very strongly with manhood and womanhood, actually gender isn't binary for anyone at all. And you can choose to identify with one of those two categories, or you can just kind of let it go and just go from here. And that's sort of what I've done. So even though I think a lot of people will call me a trans man, in fact I'm medically diagnosed as a trans man, I'm not, because gender doesn't work like that. Yeah. So do you feel gender is, as in itself, is just like a construct, or is just I don't know, something that society made up? Or because I think what a lot of people think gender is actually physical sex, right? That's what they think gender is. Yes. And that's why they get confused. And they might look at someone and say, well, you're obviously whatever sex they think you are. So yeah, it's definitely a construct, but it's meaningful in the way one lives one's life. And to bring it back to the parenting point again, one of the reasons it became intolerable, one of the reasons I started questioning, is because things get a lot more binary if people are reading you as a mother. And that's a very specific social role. That has so much weight, and it destroyed what I've built up to protect myself against the dysphoria, against the kind of nagging in the back of my head, because it was very firmly putting me in this box. You are a woman. And not always in just a negative, having to caregive constantly kind of way, because actually I wanted that and quite enjoyed a lot of that, even if it's very wearying. But that you're one of the girls now. And just being categorised like that, it makes me shudder, because I'm not one of them, and I've always known I'm not one of the girls. And being able to go, well, there's nothing wrong with being one of the girls. It's just, that's not me. It's like if someone gets your name wrong, you're just like, that's not me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that,
Mm.
so yeah, it is a construct.
Mm-hmm.
We have constructed it, but the same way money's a construct, but I can't go tell my landlord that.
Yeah. By the way.
By the way, money's a social construct. I'm opting out. You know, it would be great if you could.
Fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have anything else that you want to maybe say to people who are going through a similar thing that you've been going through?
I mean, yeah, I think the thing I would say is you have your whole life, and you should have your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it feels like you don't, perhaps, is because shit's got really bad. It's got really bad. And you can take time. You don't have to run, because actually you've got, well, it depends exactly how old you are, but 40, 50, 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
Even more than that, I don't know. I don't know what age people I'm talking to here, but you have all that time, and you really do, because it isn't all going to end tomorrow, and you're only feeling like that because you're in an awful, awful place right now. And I kind of wish someone had said that to me once or twice.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can change it, and it will take time, but it's okay because you've got time.
Awesome. Cool.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
You can find out more details on the website at 50shadesofgender.com/ALYS WILFRED, which is ALYS-Wilfred, where you can also read the transcript, and you can find out more about Fred on their website, ALYS-Earl.com, or on Twitter at ALYSDragon. Thank you for listening to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. You can find us online at 50shadesofgender.com and on social media. If you like what we're doing here and you want to support us, you can do so by becoming a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender. We hope you will listen again. Until then, stay curious and open-minded.